A ring that rare doesn't just resurface, especially not on the finger of the man who once erased her. Malik Carter steadied the silver tray in his hand, eyes fixed on the deep emerald stone glinting under the chandelier. 3 years of serving tables at Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, and not once had he flinched at wealth. But that ring, stopped him cold. He stepped closer, lowering the tray beside the laughing group of high-powered executives. "Beautiful piece," Malik said evenly, nodding toward Charles Whitmore's hand. "There are only 2 like it. One belonged to my mother." Whitmore's fingers curled instinctively. His grin faltered. "Excuse me." Malik met his gaze, unblinking. "Just thought I'd mention it." The laughter died. Awkward silence spilled across the table. Whitmore's guests looked between them, confused by the sudden tension. "Would you like still or sparkling?" Malik asked, voice smooth, indifferent. Whitmore stared. "What did you say her name was?" "I didn't," Malik replied. "But you already know it." He turned away before security could even process the exchange. Whatever power Charles Whitmore thought he had in this room, it had just shifted. And the man who'd buried Evelyn Carter's truth had no idea how much of it was about to rise. Her name was Evelyn Carter, and in the winter of 1995, she arrived at the Whitmore estate with nothing but a fraying duffel bag, a handwritten reference letter, and a belly 6 months pregnant. She was 19. Alone, afraid, and invisible to the world that measured worth by pedigree and power. Charles Whitmore, already a rising real estate kingpin at the time, had looked her over without much interest. "Can you clean?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she said softly. That was all it took. Evelyn Carter became the evening maid in the Greenwich mansion that housed secrets thicker than its marble walls. She kept her head down, cleaned quietly, listened carefully, and in doing so, heard everything she was not supposed to. It happened on a stormy Thursday night. One of those northeast freezes that iced the windows and dulled every other sound in the house. Evelyn was dusting the study when she heard Charles's voice, sharp and panicked, shouting into the phone. "They are asking questions about the permits. If that paperwork surfaces, everything falls. Burn it. I do not care. Just make it disappear." Evelyn froze. She stepped back behind the velvet curtain, heart pounding. From there, she heard it all. Bribes to city officials, forged environmental reports, millions funneled through shell companies. And she understood instantly. Charles Whitmore was not just rich. He was untouchable, because he had built his fortune on lies too dangerous to surface. When the call ended, silence fell for only a beat. Then his footsteps moved swiftly through the room that he yanked the curtain back. Her eyes met his. The dust rag still in her trembling hand. "How much did you hear?" His voice was ice. "Nothing, sir," Evelyn whispered. "I was just cleaning." But he knew, and she knew he knew that he did not shout. He did not call for help. Instead, he walked to his desk, opened a velvet box, and held up a ring. A Burmese emerald surrounded by 10 white diamonds. Heavy, expensive, terrifying. "This ring is worth more than you will make in 10 years, he said quietly. "Take it. But if you speak a single word about what you heard tonight, I will erase you, and no one will look twice." She took it, not because she wanted to, because she was carrying a child, and she believed him. Evelyn Carter vanished from Greenwich the next day. No notice, no forwarding address, no trace. She reappeared 3 states away, in a rundown apartment on the east side of Detroit, working back-to-back shifts as a janitor, diner server, and hospital orderly, just to keep the lights on. She named her son Malik, and she never spoke Whitmore's name again. But some wounds do not stay quiet forever. Not when they come with a ring you cannot afford to wear and a story too dangerous to share. Years passed. Evelyn kept moving, always afraid she had been followed. Always afraid Whitmore's reach could still find her. She never used her past employer as a reference. Never explained the ring. Never told Malik why she never stayed at one job long enough to be noticed. But she kept that ring locked in a tiny box beneath her bed. Proof that the silence had cost her something. And when the cancer came, it came fast, stage 4. Aggressive, unforgiving. The treatments were experimental. Insurance would not cover them. She needed $230,000 to buy a chance at survival. She died with $117 in her checking account. No lawsuit. No obituary. No justice. Just Malik, 24 years old, standing over her grave with nothing but questions and a worn velvet box that had haunted her for nearly 3 decades. It was not just grief that burned in his chest. It was rage, because Evelyn Carter had kept her promise. She never said a word, and Charles Whitmore had counted on that silence staying buried with her. But her son, he had other plans. 2 nights after the ring incident, Malik Carter left the restaurant at midnight and found Charles Whitmore leaning against a black Mercedes Maybach, hands in pockets, eyes unreadable. "Get in," Whitmore said. Malik didn't move. "You followed me?" Whitmore forced a smile. "You want answers, don't you?" Malik stepped into the car, not out of obedience, but control. From the moment the door shut, he was recording. They drove in silence until Whitmore broke it. "I do not know what your mother told you, but I think we can settle this reasonably." Malik said nothing. Whitmore reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim envelope. $50,000. Tax-free. You can use it to pay off school loans, move somewhere nice. Start over. Malik stared at the envelope, then looked out the window. "Start over with what, Mr. Whitmore?" "My mother's erasure." Whitmore stiffened. "You're angry. I get that. But be realistic. That ring, she stole it. That's a felony. Let's not make this uglier than it needs to be." "She didn't steal anything," Malik replied calmly. "She survived you." Whitmore's expression shifted. Annoyance. Then fear. He hadn't expected that kind of poise. "Fine. 100,000, he snapped. "Cash. No questions asked." Malik turned his phone slightly in his pocket, ensuring a clear audio capture. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never about money. Everyone has a price." Malik's voice dropped to a whisper. "Some people only have patience." Whitmore's jaw clenched. "What exactly do you want?" "I'll let you know," Malik said, and stepped out of the car. Whitmore's offers would go up, but his control had already collapsed. The next day, Malik walked into a quiet legal aid office in Brooklyn. He handed over the old velvet box and a flash drive with the audio recording. Across the desk sat Elena Marquez, assistant district attorney for the Southern District of New York. 10 years younger than Whitmore. 10 times hungrier. "I knew your mother," she said as soon as she saw the name. "Evelyn came to me once." 2018. She had documents, names, dates, ledgers. "What happened?" Malik asked. 2 days later, the whistleblower willing to back her up died in a car crash. And a week after that, my office was robbed. Files gone, including hers. Malik nodded slowly. "Sounds familiar." Elena leaned forward. "But things have changed. Transparency laws, whistleblower protections, social pressure. If you're serious, I'll help you. But we need to do this right." "I've waited 29 years, Malik said. "I'm not rushing anything." For the next 3 weeks, every word Whitmore spoke, every shady offer, every veiled threat was recorded, cataloged, and archived. Malik didn't flinch, didn't escalate. He simply listened, nodded, and walked away. It drove Whitmore insane. Then came the third offer, $250,000. "I can wire it tonight," Whitmore whispered outside the restaurant loading dock. "You'll never have to work a single night shift again." Malik smiled, the kind of smile that does not reach the eyes. "Your mistake was assuming I wanted to disappear." Whitmore's face twisted. "Then what do you want?" "Justice," Malik said softly. "The kind you can't buy. The kind that does not fit in an envelope." Whitmore stormed off. But he knew now. He was bleeding power with every step. Elena called that night. "Federal audit starts in 2 weeks. If we drop solid evidence of obstruction and bribery before that, they'll have everything they need to go wide." "Let's finish it," Malik said. From that point forward, every move was precise, surgical. Each encounter with Whitmore was a quiet escalation. Never loud, never chaotic. Just sharpened silence. And beneath that silence was the storm Evelyn Carter never got to unleash. The lights inside the Empire Ballroom sparkled like stars, bouncing off gold trim, crystal chandeliers, and $1,000 gowns. It was the city's most elite charity event of the year. Tickets cost $5,000. The guest list included mayors, tech CEOs, and TV personalities. And Charles Whitmore, of course, had his own front row table, flashing smiles for the cameras like a man untouched by consequence. He had no idea Malik Carter was already in the room, wearing a catering uniform and holding a tray of champagne. Malik moved through the crowd like smoke, unseen, unbothered, deliberate. He had rehearsed this moment for months to T exactly 8:42 p.m. Just as Whitmore stood to pose for a photo with the mayor, Malik stepped up behind him. "Champagne, Mr. Whitmore?" he asked, voice calm, expression steady. Whitmore turned and froze. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed. "Working," Malik replied. "Like my mother did, the night you threatened her life." The people around them stopped talking. The music faded into a tense hush. Several cameras stayed locked on the confrontation, still live-streaming across multiple platforms. Whitmore glanced at security, but Malik raised one hand and set down a plain white envelope on the table. "No need for trouble," Malik said. "I'm just returning something that belongs to you." Inside that envelope were copies of everything. Documents, recordings, payment logs, legal threats. All of it. "You once said every man has his price," Malik said, loud enough for the nearest microphones to catch. "But you forgot to ask what the price of justice is." Whitmore snatched the envelope, tearing it open. His face changed as he read. Calm turned to confusion, then panic, then horror. Names, dates, wire transfers, testimonies, photos, signatures. .30. Years of corruption laid bare in less than 3 minutes. "Where did you get this?" Whitmore whispered. "Your son," Malik answered. "The one who still has a conscience." The entire ballroom was silent now. Then came the sound of doors opening and heels clicking against marble. Elena Marquez stepped into view, followed by 4 federal agents in dark suits. "Charles Whitmore," she said firmly, holding up a warrant. "You're under arrest for bribery, witness intimidation, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice." Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. No one looked away. Whitmore backed up like a trapped animal. "This is a mistake. I have lawyers." "You had power," Elena replied. "Now you have handcuffs." The agents moved in. He struggled. "One last plea. You think this will fix anything?" he shouted at Malik. "You think this will bring your mother back?" Malik stepped closer, eyes locked on the man who had stolen everything from Evelyn Carter. "No," he said. "But maybe it stops the next Evelyn." They cuffed Whitmore and led him through the ballroom like a fallen king. Every face turned away. Every former ally vanished behind a glass of wine or a sudden cough. The broadcast was still live. Malik walked up to the podium and took the microphone. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just spoke clearly. "My name is Malik Carter. My mother's name was Evelyn Carter. For 29 years, she lived in silence because a powerful man threatened her. Tonight, that silence ends." People did not applaud. They stood, quiet, stunned, and shaken. As security cleared the floor, Elena came over. Malik handed her a small black recorder. "He offered me more money earlier tonight," he said, "just before the lights came on." "You got the recording?" Malik nodded. "My mother always said, truth walks slow, but it gets where it needs to go." And tonight, it had arrived. Outside the ballroom, reporters swarmed. Videos spread online like wildfire. Within an hour, headlines broke across every major network. Billionaire arrested during gala. Waiter exposes 30 years of crimes. Malik didn't watch the news. He didn't need to. He had done what he came to do. Not just for his mother, but for every person who thought the system would never listen. Charles Whitmore was not just arrested. He was stripped of image, of control, of the illusion that his power could shield him forever. By morning, every major news outlet had the footage. Billionaire exposed live on air. Waiter triggers financial collapse. His mugshot was on the front page. The Empire Financial logo, once a symbol of untouchable wealth, became a meme overnight. Bail was set at $50 million. But there was a catch. All of Whitmore's accounts had been frozen. Assets seized. Properties flagged. The man who had once silenced people with 7-figure payouts could not even afford his freedom. One by one, the cracks widened. Board members resigned. Contracts dissolved. Sponsors disappeared without comment. Former allies who had toasted champagne beside him weeks earlier now scrubbed their websites and speeches clean of his name. But the worst came 2 days later, when his own son surfaced, Julian. Whitmore, age 34, had remained out of the spotlight for years. Quiet, reclusive, but not blind. That he stood in front of a podium with a leather folder in one hand and said only 12 words before handing it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. "My father built his empire on silence. I will not protect it." Inside were ledgers, internal emails, handwritten instructions, signatures, evidence that Charles Whitmore had committed federal crimes across at least 5 states, using intimidation, forged contracts, and offshore laundering to bury opposition. The media exploded again. Now it was not just New York. Investigations opened in California, Illinois, and Georgia. Elena Marquez began coordinating directly with federal prosecutors. The charges were expanding by the hour: racketeering, tax evasion, conspiracy to obstruct justice. Inside the foundation office in Harlem, Malik Carter sat quietly, watching a press conference unfold on a mounted television. But he was not smiling. He was not celebrating, that he was preparing, because for him, this was not revenge. This was just the first domino. Evelyn Carter's name was being spoken on national television. Law students were already calling her story a landmark case. Legal scholars had begun referring to a developing strategy as the Carter model. Malik remained composed through it all, that he returned every call from Elena, reviewed every document before submission, logged every testimony from victims now coming forward. He was not building a case anymore. He was building a blueprint, and people were following it. Across the country, employees who had once been forced into silence began writing letters to Malik. Letters that started with lines like, "I was afraid to speak until I saw what you did. My mother worked for men like Whitmore. She thought no one would ever believe her. I am ready to testify." Inside one of those letters was a sealed envelope, a photo of a woman in a cleaning uniform, eyes wide with fear. A signature, scrawled on the back, "He. Carter, 1995." Malik held it for a long time. His mother was gone, but her name was everywhere now, in headlines, in hearings, in history. And Charles Whitmore? He sat in a holding cell with no phone calls allowed, no lawyers willing to risk their license, and no one left to protect him. The empire was not falling. It was collapsing, and still, Malik Carter was just getting started. 6 months after the gala, the office overlooking Lenox Avenue had a new name on the glass: the Evelyn Carter Foundation. The IT wasn't funded by donors. IT was built from the ashes of Charles Whitmore's empire, frozen assets redirected by the courts, seized properties liquidated, and fraudulent offshore accounts reclaimed. Malik didn't want a monument. He wanted a mechanism, and he made one. The foundation's mission was simple: defend the silenced, protect the vulnerable, and expose the powerful, no matter how deep their pockets ran. Within the first 90 days, they'd helped 17 families file civil suits against former employers for corporate intimidation, harassment, and retaliation. 3 of those cases led to early settlements. One resulted in a CEO's resignation, but that wasn't the real win. The real win was that people were no longer afraid to speak. They had somewhere to go now, something Evelyn Carter never had. Malik didn't run the foundation alone. He brought the right people with him. Elena Marquez left the DA's office to serve as the foundation's legal director. Julian Whitmore, estranged from his father but committed to undoing the damage, joined as an ethics advisor, helping to create transparency, protocols for whistleblower cases. Even Malik's old restaurant co-workers came on board. Camila, the night hostess who had slipped him free meals during his worst weeks, now handled intake for incoming families. Reggie, the dishwasher who once helped him crash in a storage room after eviction, managed housing services for displaced workers. They weren't just staff. They were family. And then came the doctrine. What began as a strategy between Malik and Elena, quiet recording, patient collection, airtight documentation, was now being studied in law schools and cited in courtrooms across the country. They called it the Carter Doctrine, a new playbook for exposing white-collar predators using their own systems against them. Federal prosecutors in 4 states adopted versions of it. Congressional aides requested briefings. 1 Whistleblower protection. Bill even quoted Evelyn Carter by name. Malik never forgot why he started this. Every morning, he walked past the small glass case mounted in the foundation's lobby. Inside it hung a single object, a ruby and diamond ring. The one Evelyn had been forced to accept in silence. Below it, a simple plaque read, "Evelyn Carter, 1971, 2023. She never stopped believing the truth mattered. Neither did her son. People who visited the foundation didn't ask for handouts. They asked for hope, and Malik gave it to them, not with promises, but with proof, because now they had case law, they had leverage, they had a name that meant something. He didn't crave recognition, but it came anyway. News outlets ran documentaries. Legal journals requested interviews. Social media turned Malik into a quiet icon for reform, but he never let it get to his head. He answered every letter, sat in on every intake meeting, listened to every victim who walked through the door, because he knew exactly what silence felt like. And slowly, the system began to shift. The Evelyn Carter Foundation became more than a nonprofit. It became a movement. A living reminder that power doesn't only belong to the wealthy. It belongs to the determined. Those with patience, purpose, memory, and just enough fire to keep going. 1 year after Charles Whitmore's arrest, Malik Carter stood behind a podium draped in deep blue velvet. The auditorium at Columbia Law School was filled with graduates in black robes and gold tassels. Families packed every row. Malik had never been a lawyer, but today he was the keynote speaker because Evelyn Carter once dreamed of sitting in this room. She never got the chance. Pregnancy, bills, a wealthy man's threats. But now her name was written in gold on the scholarship fund announced that morning. The Evelyn Carter Award for Truth and Justice. Malik looked out at the students, the next generation of prosecutors, defenders, lawmakers, and said only one thing before the silence settled. My mother used to say the truth has legs. I just taught it how to run. The audience didn't clap right away. They sat still, listening, feeling it. Then came the thunder. Her ring, preserved in a sealed glass case, stood just outside the hall, displayed under a single light. No longer a bribe, now a symbol. Malik didn't stay for the luncheon. He returned to the office quietly. There was still work to do. Charles Whitmore had been sentenced 2 months earlier, 25 years in federal prison without parole. He would be 87 before he saw daylight again, if he lived that long. Malik had been in the courtroom for the sentencing. They'd locked eyes one last time, but he didn't feel rage, not even satisfaction, just a quiet peace, because this wasn't about vengeance. It was about closure, about showing that justice didn't require shouting. Sometimes it came from patience and the will to build something better. That afternoon, a woman knocked on the foundation's front door. Her name was Loretta Miles. 62. A housekeeper. Eyes like she'd lived 5 lives inside one. She carried an envelope and a name. Not Whitmore this time. Someone else. Someone bigger. I heard what you did, she said. I didn't think anyone would believe my story. Malik offered her a seat. No clipboard. No formalities. Just eye contact. Just listening. Because Evelyn had once walked through a door like that, with truth and no one to hand it to. Not anymore. Loretta's case became the next one. Then another. Then another. Each time, Malik remembered that this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new one. A system had worked, not because it was perfect, but because someone refused to let it rot. Malik Carter had taken pain and made it architectured. He turned silence into movement, and his mother's memory into a map for others to follow. He never wanted to be famous, just useful, and he was, because when history looks back on the empire that collapsed and the foundation that rose in its place, it will remember that Evelyn Carter told the truth, and her son made the world listen.